Okay, thanks so much for joining me. Shan, this is Shan Boody. Can you give a little background about what you do?
I am a media-facing sex and relationship educator and the author of The Game of Desire and a fan of yours.
Oh, thank you. And she wrote a great book, so you definitely all have to read it because I found it so interesting. You talked so much about relationships and how to really be in tune with yourself, which I think is a really important piece. I think for a lot of people in my audience, they want to know how to help their relationship. Many of them are in long-term relationships, or they are trying to get pregnant or had a long fertility journey, or maybe they have kids already, and it really puts a lot of stress on the relationship and it changes the way you are with your partner, of course. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, what are some tips that you suggest for people who are in a relationship to make sure that their sexuality is, still part of who they are as a couple?
Yeah, I think that the unfortunate bit of the work that we do is that it's not done in school. It's not done universally. At the end of the day, the information that we get around pregnancy and love and romance and dating is that it's serendipitous, that some people get it, some people don't. It's just magical. You can't control it. Either you are or you aren't. They'll just find you. It'll just happen. A lot of people just doesn't work that way. And so when they do get into relationships, at the end of the day, we're born to bond. Biologically, we're born to create connections. And so when you first start dating somebody, your biology is doing all the work for you. It's giving you that rush of dopamine, that sense of butterflies, that sense of danger and excitement. And so as love turns from passionate to companionate, all of a sudden those chemicals start, slowing down and that faucet starts to turn off. And now you find yourself in a position where people begin to question, well, is our love real if I don't still feel those same feelings in the beginning? Versus, no. It's naturally going to happen. And one of my favorite researchers, Dr. Helen Fisher, she was saying that if people continue to feel that passion towards their partner, it would lessen their life expectancy. Because every single time that you are around somebody who gives you butterflies, it creates an adrenaline rush, which damages your tissue. So it's a survival mechanism that your partner's not as thrilling to you anymore. But of course, we miss that rush. We miss those initial feelings. And that's when you have to turn your love into manual drive. And now you have to start creating romance, creating those moments, creating passion. And your body will kick into gear eventually once it starts seeing you doing something different. But you can't rely anymore on those I have to have you emotions.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter. It's not about your relationship or your partnership or your connection. Everyone goes through that. J-Lo's going to go through that. I'm going to go through it. You're going to go through it. You're going to go through it. We have to get into gear and do it ourselves.
Yeah, what do you suggest for motivation? Because that excitement is part of, it's nice to get dressed up and go on a date. And then when you're with your partner for a long time, we kind of get lazy, I feel like, and we're not really as motivated to do that. So what do you suggest for people who are maybe not sure how to bring that back into their life?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of quizzes. I think one of the most beautiful things that we can share is language, right? Language is the key to communication and having a word to describe something. And once again, because we don't go to school for emotional intelligence or intimacy building, we don't have the language to describe what we like. And that's when you ask people, what do you like in love? And it's like, we all say the same cliche, like long walks on the beach, romantic dates, and that might actually not be true to us or very specific to us. So I'm a really big fan of doing quizzes because that gives you a universal language to describe with your partner and also gives you a framework of how to discuss what your needs are. So I like turn-on triggers. It's a really important one to me because that essentially says, hey, so you don't have the I want to jump your bones, take your clothes off right now passion you used to have. No problem. What does your partner actually need now to get into the mood? What really does turn them on a more elevated level? Let me learn that and learn how to speak that to them. And in terms of dates, maybe going on dates isn't that exciting to you, but maybe you aren't going on the right dates that are actually best fit for your connection and your bond. So I would say doing homework, as much as that's not the fun answer, the greatest way to build intimacy and to get better at romance is to read, is to educate, is to do quizzes, to do assessments, and have conversations that you don't see happen in movies.
Mm-hmm. You know that I'm a big fan of understanding your body because I talk about hormones all the time and I want you to understand your body. So I actually think if you understand your emotions, you can communicate better with your partner as well. What I find a lot of times is we get tired, we get busy, and we put other priorities first versus connecting with our partner, especially when we have kids or we're looking at stress from jobs and things like that. So do you have any suggestions on how we can remember to put our relationship first?
Yeah, I think once you get into that mindset of, oh, this is not magical cosmos. This doesn't just happen, right? Like love takes work, and falling in love is easy. Staying in love and building love is difficult. And difficult is, I hate using the word challenging or hard or difficult, because I think that gives the idea that relationships should be hard. They shouldn't. Just like I think if you're in a job that you would describe as like awful and grueling and super hard work, can there be healthy challenges? Yes. Should you have to rise to the occasion? You have to constantly update your skills? Yes. But if you're in a space where it feels like heartbreaking work, I never say that that should be the norm for anybody, or the litmus test of what a good relationship is. So I believe the work should feel joyful in a sense, but there does have to be this idea that this isn't just come naturally, right? Like anything worth having takes work to have, and it takes maintenance and self-improvement, and you can't go to school to become a pharmacist and never update your skills again. You have to continuously try to get better at your craft if you're truly passionate. So I think once you switch your mindset of, this is just like everything else in life. If I want to see results, I got to put in the effort. If I want this to improve, I have to individually improve as a person. And once you do that, you start to, I think, naturally make the space for it.
Yeah. What do you do if your partner is on a different page? Let's say you're trying to improve something and your partner is not as open-minded to changing, improving, taking feedback, that kind of thing.
I would say like no one likes to do things they're not good at, right? Like if you're not good at math, you don't want to go to math class. If you're not good at cooking, Thanksgiving comes, you're like, I'm not in the kitchen. And so for a lot of people, it's not that they don't want to do the emotional work, it's that they've never done it before. And if they have attempted it, it hasn't gone well. I think a lot of masculine carrying individuals were discouraged from emotional work. And anytime they had emotions, those were shut down. And so that's a place that they have learned to suppress. And so trying to come back to the table and now celebrate that side of themselves is a learning curve. So I would say for a lot of people who have a partner like that, people like to do things that they're good at. So find a way that you guys can have those discussions and they can shine. And also too, like, don't outshine them. That is like, I was talking to this podcaster and she was like a self-help guru, and she's done every quiz, she does all the quizzes. She's completely into self-help. And so she would be coming to her partner and trying to do things with him, and then he would shy away. And I'm like, imagine playing basketball against Michael Jordan and he's dunking on you. Maybe it's fun the first time because it's kind of like a novelty. Day 4, you're like, this isn't fun at all.
Yeah.
I don't get to play. I'm just losing. I feel stupid. I feel slow. I don't feel skilled in this area. So you have to find, just like when you play basketball with a kid, you have to lower your skill level so it's also engaging and fun for them.
Yeah. You talk a lot about turn-on triggers as well, which I think is really interesting because it puts words to things that we don't otherwise understand about ourselves. I find sometimes we feel pressure, like we have to have an orgasm, we have to give pleasure, we have to experience pleasure, and we have 100 other things to do. How do you, I guess, avoid that perspective of, I have all this pressure on me related to this connection?
I mean, the key to happiness is managing expectations. And so I think it's really important to map out the expectations. This is like a very benign example, but I am Indian as well. And so I'm very hairy. Like my leg hair right now is just, and this is after laser, okay? This is after 5 sessions of laser hair removal. So my guilt for being hairy in the bedroom was like really, really high. And I felt this pressure to like always shave, and like shaving as much as I need to is really uncomfortable. So it was actually not until I sat down and had a conversation with my husband and was just like, hey, like, does this bother you? Can I be hairy sometimes? And he's like, yeah, I don't care. Like, I've never cared about it. And it's not even as if him saying that changed my perspective. I still feel the guilt when we're being intimate and he goes and rubs my leg and it's furry.
And you're like, yeah.
But I have that, and then I remind myself, he doesn't care, don't worry about it. So I would say, like, it takes a long time to unpack certain societal expectations or pressure. And if you have that idea that you have to always make your partner orgasm or you have to always orgasm, I would say, 1, bring it to a conversation, actually find out who the person you're sleeping with feels, come to a general understanding together. But even once you have that understanding, it still takes some time to get over it. If you spent 20 years being told sex is this one particular thing, you might need 5 years to unlearn that.
I also find when I talk to a lot of my clients, I'll say, try to be in the moment, try to be mindful, practice, ways of really feeling pleasure and really changing it up, because I find a lot of times we just do the same thing over and over. So I like the idea of being creative. And, what would you suggest for people who are looking for creative ways of trying new things in the bedroom?
You know what my partner taught me was just like through watching him, sex is never the same because he's authentic. Like there's never, and I knew that from our very first experience. I'm like, wow, this person does not watch porn. Because you know when people watch a lot of pornography, like they become almost rehearsed in a way, the sounds they make. And there was this study where they had hearing impaired people have sex who had never watched porn versus those who had, and the sounds were very different because we again are almost like playing a role through that. And so the authenticity of this is a chance for two bodies to connect, to experience each other, to experience euphoria, pleasure, pain, etc. And so why should that be the same every time? Because there's a difference between I do this and when I do that. And so those subtle things and how you react to them, if you're authentic, they're going to be different. So I think sex never becomes dull if you take yourself out of being rehearsed because you're just in the moment and you're feeling, number one. And number two, whenever people say like changed up in the bedroom, I think they're like, gotta go to Cancun, gotta go have a threesome with somebody that we meet at a bar, blah, 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 blah. It's this really big change. Or like, let's go to the sex toy store and buy the biggest dildo. And it's like, or when you're giving this person head, for example, you can put your hand somewhere different. Or when you guys are intimate, try like staring each other's eyes the whole time or change the light bulb to red. Like the brain is actually pretty simple. It's a basic bitch. Sorry, brain. It doesn't actually require a lot to feel new and to get that dopamine rush again. So little small changes that you can do can make the experience fresh again.
And really communicate too. I like this. I don't like that. That's a big factor too. Sometimes when I teach women about their bodies in particular, we have changes throughout our cycle. So the way I describe it, we can't have our partner being like, are you PMSing? That's not a good thing. We don't want to hear that. But if you kind of educate them on, I'm in winter, I'm bleeding, and then I go in through spring and my sexual desire is different. I have a different view of the world. We might want things differently in different times of our cycle, different times of our hormones as well. How do you suggest we communicate with our partners, whether it's related to hormones or anything else that we might be feeling, if it's sex is dirty or we feel like, I'm not doing a good job, whatever that may be, how do you suggest we communicate?
Yeah, you know what? It's when the culture is communication is not hard to do, right? Like it's very difficult to ask your coworker to help you out when you never ask for help. It's very difficult to tell your parents that you've done something wrong if you don't have that open dialogue. And so the culture of communication is really important because that's the answer in itself. It's not the talk. It's the continuous conversation. I was actually talking to somebody who was going through menopause and they were like, it's so difficult because one day I'm really dry, one day I'm really wet, sometimes I'm too hot, sometimes I'm super horny, sometimes I feel like just being alone. It's just like constant changes. I said, as much as that's annoying, it's actually forcing you to do what everyone should be doing, which is over communicate, which is have constant dialogue and discussion. And so when your body's going through changes, it's actually forcing you to do what you should be doing all along, which is advocating for your needs, advocating for what feels good for you. So take those times as an excuse to practice. And the more that you talk about it, the easier it becomes to discuss, which is very simple math, but for some reason we're all looking for like hacks so that we can get it all done in one conversation. It's just not going to happen.
No.
You just have to like ad nausea. I am annoying as hell. Like I will sometimes be like, after sex is done, like minute 7, I tried a new technique. What did you think? Did you feel comfortable? Here's this felt for me. This side of my like vaginal canal is kind of hurting today. And we really do over discuss, and maybe he finds it annoying, but I know it makes the sex better. So who can complain?
No one's going to complain about that.
Right.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I noticed in your book that I wanted to ask you about. The first thing is you talk a lot about apology language, right?
Yes.
And I feel like there's so many emotions that are tied in together with our jobs and our kids and our reproductive potential, or even just we've had a bad day and then we take it out on someone we love. So can you talk a little bit about, communicating when you're pissed off or when you're upset? Like the apology language I thought was a really interesting piece because I've heard of turn on triggers before, but not the apology piece, which I think is important.
Apology language is Dr. Gary Chapman. He also wrote the 5 love languages, and it's a way of understanding that, because love languages is genius, right? I think it's our first universally understood way of communicating our intimate needs. And so it's important to express, hey, here's how I want to be loved, but also, hey, here's how I want to be understood. And that's what apology languages truly are. In conflict, here's how I want to feel understood. Because we're 2 separate people with different lives, different values, different upbringings, different perspectives. And in this situation, more than anything else, I need to feel at one with you. And there's a particular way that's going to communicate most effectively to me that you do understand me. And that's what apology languages essentially is. And in many ways, it has been like to me, the greatest thing in my relationship. It's like a cheat code sometimes, because my partner's apology language is to accept responsibility. And so in times, if I can just say, I dropped the ball, I messed up, I totally see where you're coming from, it's on me. I'll just be like, I'll go quiet for a second, and I'm like, anything else you want to talk about? No, that's it. I feel better now, right? So mine is to an act of restitution. So if you break my watch, buy me a new one. If you spill milk, go wipe it up. If you missed a date, make up a makeup date. So knowing people's apology language is essentially accepting how it is that they feel understood and resolute. And not to say, like, same with love languages, like, people can be multiple.
Of course.
But you're just trying to give somebody, like, the path to least resistance and that cheat code to get where you guys want to go the fastest.
Yeah, it's funny, in our house, we actually talk about this, but we will preface things. I'll be like, I'm in a bad mood today. I just need to vent, or
Yes.
I need you to say that was not okay what you did, or we just say what we need, because we can't read each other's minds, and that helps a lot, I find.
Oh, absolutely. I was saying this actually yesterday, that we do this for children, right? Like, we never say bad kid, or you're being an asshole, you're being a bad person. We do sometimes, but mostly we're like, they're tired, they're hungry. Like, we troubleshoot for them. Like, we give them grace and space to not show up as the perfect specimen of humanity. And if they don't, instead of blaming and judging, and a good parent will troubleshoot, and we'll go through a list of things that you have or haven't, or things that could have changed for you that day. I think giving adults that grace as well too, wherein that, like, not every snap makes you a terrible demonic person. Sometimes someone can look at you and say, how was your day at work today?
Yeah.
And even if you don't have, because even better if you have the aptitude to say it yourself, to walk in the door and say, I didn't eat lunch today. No one talked to me for half an hour. I'm going to go upstairs with my removable shower head. Don't bother mommy. Or you could, have the space for somebody else to say, do you want 30 minutes to yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, and recognizing they maybe didn't do it on purpose just to piss you off.
Yes.
They just had their own issue. It wasn't about you necessarily, which I find we do end up having when we have all these responsibilities around our day. There was something else you talk quite a lot about in the Game of Desire, which I really enjoyed. When you talk about self-confidence and how to go into a room and just really own that room. And I find it's very useful for someone who's single and wants to find, a partner, because they have to really put themselves out there. But I find it can also be useful for women, or anyone really, as they go through transitions. So if you have had a child, if your body has changed, if you're on fertility hormones and you're bloated every day, your self-confidence gets shattered. You feel not yourself. You feel gross. You just want to hide away in sweatpants. And so that piece of self-confidence, I think, is really important. Do you have any tips to share on how to feel confident when you may not feel yourself?
Yeah, this is actually a video that we just shot before, where you were talking about if there is an issue, it's taking that now and examining it. Confidence is not a choice, it's a result. It's something that you gain because you have put the work in. And so if you can assess, hey, I'm not really feeling like I own the room, or I feel like when I walk out there I present my best self, that's great. That's step one. That's recognition. Now, once you have recognition, you have to start putting action behind it. It's just kind of the same thing of recognizing that I can't cook very well. You can't just be like, you know what, from now on, I'm going to believe in myself and force myself to believe in myself as a cook. It's not going to change the fact that the rice is burning. You have to learn the skills, enlist the help of experts and others, practice in low-risk environments, find a support group who you can bounce ideas off of, give yourself space to be imperfect, and through time, you're going to find yourself being able to excel in that area. But recognizing there's a problem is not the precursor to a solution. It is like the foundation of what a solution is. So I often say to people, I would much rather talk to a person who lacks confidence and can admit that this isn't working than somebody who's delusional and doesn't even see there's a problem. So just know that it's a journey, but you have made the right step by acknowledging this isn't working. And that's what the Game of Desire is, right? It's not a book that just constantly reminds you to believe in yourself. It's like, step one, do this.
Tactical.
Step two, do this. Try this out. That doesn't work for you. Try this out instead. Go see this expert. Talk to this person. Learn this behavior. And through doing all that work, hopefully you create your own foundation for true confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. When I was reading it, I remember thinking, I did this when I was single, and now I forgot to do it. I should bring that back. Should bring back the eye gaze or whatever it is.
Yes.
And it's actually fun. And you realize there's certain times when you actually feel better doing doing it. And there's certain times of the month when you feel more, there's so many different parallels and connections. So thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find out more about you? Because I know you have amazing information that you're sharing.
You know what? I feel like you get one wish in life. So my one wish is that people get the book, The Game of Desire. I have been working on it for basically 10 years. My last book, Laid, came out in 2009. And this book truly is making intimacy your superpower. And best of all, you can actually get it for free if you go to audible.ca, if you're in Canada.com, if you're in America, and you sign up for a free trial, you get a free book. And then after you get my book, you don't have to stay. And so then you got it for free. If you want to support and buy it, it's available everywhere books are sold, but I'm all for the free.
Awesome. I'll link it up too. And then you have a great YouTube channel that has a load of information. So I'm sure people will tune into that too.
Including you.
Yes. I was on your YouTube channel.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.